Hey everyone, continuing for our conics, we have the parabola. And this will be the second of 4 conic curves for the H2 Math syllabus. But for the A Math syllabus, this will be our last one. Although you need not know the general equation of a parabola, but you need to be familiar with the, well, sort of equations you need to actually draw them out. Alright? And they are actually your quadratic graphs. Alright, so let me explain. So the first general equation is the quadratic graph, right? Y minus k equals to a x minus h whole thing square. And you notice that this is basically the completing the square technique, just that we bring the extra constant to the y side. For the second equation is the replacing x with y and y with x. So we have x minus h, so it's going to keep hk as an idea, and then y minus k whole thing square. Alright, where hk and a are your constants. So the shapes of the parabola again depends on the constant a, right? The coefficient of x squared or the coefficient of y squared. So if you recall from our quadratic, if a is positive, it's a positive shape, therefore it's U shape. If a is less than 0, it will be a negative shape, therefore a N shape. For the next equation, it will be a C shape and an inverted C shape. Why is that so? One way to think about it is that if a is bigger than 0, and because of the fact that y minus k whole thing squared must be bigger than or equal to 0, x minus h must be bigger than or equal to 0 as well. Which means one thing. If y approaches infinity or negative infinity, because it doesn't matter, y minus k whole thing squared would be a very, 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 very large value. And it is positive because a is positive. Because of that, x minus h must be very, very, very positive, heading towards infinity at both sides. Therefore, it will both extend towards the positive infinity side of x, hence the C shape. And because of that, the opposite is true for a that is negative. Alright, you will then instead approach towards the negative infinity side for a less than 0. Alright, so what is this value, or what is the significance of hk? In circles, we know this as the center. On the same note, for parabolas, is actually the tip or the turning point, or more specifically the vertex, right? So what do I mean by the tip or the turning point? There are these, right? It's not exactly a turning point for the second one, but it's considered the tip. All right, so these are the vertex at hk. All right, so the next question is, what's the purpose of a? Well, for the H2 Math students and the A Math students, you need not know what the significance of A is, but if you're taking further math, then you need to know, right? Because the constant A actually is part of the definition of the parabola, right? The actual definition of a parabola, where we talk about directrix, where we talk about focus as well. Alright, but you need not know that because this is a H2 Math syllabus, A Math syllabus. I will make a separate continuation for H2 further math people. Alright, although I don't think there is much. So let's then start with examples. Let's start with the first one. Y minus 2 equals to, let's say, 3x minus 4 whole thing squared. Again, let's ignore the constant a, which is 3 in this case. We know that the vertex is at 4, 2. Alright. And then, well, that's pretty much it. So we know that a is bigger than 0, so it's a U shape. So the vertex is at 4, 2. So let's say this is 2, here is 4, let's say here is 4, 2. Alright. What we need to do then is quite simple. Just draw your curve. I'm gonna like break it down to 2 parts so it's easier for me to draw. Okay, you know, it doesn't look like this, but it looks close enough to this. Alright, this should be the minimum point here. So in this case, you have a minimum point, right? Because the vertex is also the minimum value for this graph. It's at the tip. In this case, it's the bottom tip. Again, make sure you have put your coordinates for your any intercept. So in this case, we only have a y-intercept. There can never be an x-intercept because y can never be less than 2. So the y-intercept will occur at x equals to 0. So we have y equals to 3 minus 4 whole thing square plus 2. So this will give me 50. Alright, 16 times 3 is 48 plus 2 is 50. So it will occur at 0, 50. Alright, I think my math is there. Alright, so that is the first parabola, y minus 2 equals to 3x minus 4 square. For our second graph, we'll be looking at, well, let's just slightly difficult one. So let's say if x plus 2 equals to, let's say, minus 3, y plus 1 whole thing square. All right. So let's calculate our vertex, which will be at minus 2, minus 1. All right. So again, don't forget it's always minus h minus k, y x minus h, y minus k. So in this case, it will be x minus minus 2, y minus minus 1. All right. And we don't care about a, just that now take note that it's negative. So our shape will be a inverted C shape, which will be this way. All right. Wow. Okay. So let's start by our vertex. Anyway, that's kind of our sort of our quote unquote turning point. So let's say this is minus 2 and this is minus 1. Our vertex will be somewhere around here. Then because we know it's an inverted C shape, so let's just draw our graph. You're bound to intersect the x-axis, but you'll never intersect the y-axis because the maximum value of x is minus 2, right? Because x will be less than minus 2, more negative than minus 2. It will never ever cross the vertical axis, the y-axis. Of course, trying to make this point smoother, I just draw a bit sharper because I can't draw out of a proper curve ruler, so well, we'll make do. Alright, so I'm just gonna write down the equation. X plus 2 equals to minus 3, y plus 1 whole thing square. Alright, now let's talk about what happens at the x-intercept, which is basically letting x be 0. Alright, so sorry, let y be 0. So when y equals to 0, we have x plus 2 equals to minus 3, 1 square. So we have x equals to minus 3 minus 2 minus 5. Alright, so here we will intersect that. Minus 5, 0. Any other intercepts? Well, nope. Alright, so that will be the graph of x plus 2 equals to minus 3 bracket y plus 2 whole thing square. Alright, so two different types of parabolas that I've drawn. But of course, there are technically 4 different types, but 2 different general equations. Alright, so there we have it, conic parabola.